This week on X-Treks, sweaty foreheads, brand new waterbeds. Wouldn't you like a new body instead?
It's the body swap episode.
Again! Welcome to X-Treks, a podcast where we introduce each other to our fandoms one episode at a time. I'm your host, Erin Cline, an X-Files spooky bitch.
And I'm your other host, Stella Cheeks, a slut for Star Trek the original series. Each podcast, we pick 2 episodes that fit a cinematic theme, watch them together, and then record our feelings.
Our theme this week is body swap. Again!
I like that we did not plan to do that. Sorry,
just read each other's minds again.
We don't need to switch bodies. We're already in here.
We're already mind melded.
Okay, so technically we didn't do a body swap episode, except for we did unintentionally when we did gift pick. But hey, we're at it again, and this time we're doing it on purpose.
Woo!
I chose the season 2 episode, Return to Tomorrow. William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, especially Leonard Nimoy, do a great job of inhabiting the ancient alien species. It's so weird and creepy to see Spock flirt and smile and be a bad guy. Because even when we've seen him be a bad guy in like Mirror Mirror, he's still like, I am a Vulcan. And this guy's
serious.
like, what if I just lean a lot and wink and smile? It's weird, but it's so good. It's a classic Star Trek episode where they go up against godlike beings and come out on top using their morals and monologuing prowess. Also, it's the first episode of Diana Moldar, and it's romantic as hell. I love it. I think it's an episode people don't talk about enough, and it's a fucking great episode.
And for the X-Files, it's time. It's finally time. Today we're talking about the 2-part season 6 episodes, Dreamland Part 1 and 2. I love these episodes, which are 100% completely and totally about people who accidentally body swapped and must figure out how to return to their actual bodies. Or, if you're Morris Fletcher, how to never do that and stay in this much better body without a failing marriage and children who despise you. For people who have been watching the series from the beginning, too, we're right in the thick of a run of episodes, which is very clear that Mulder is in love with Scully, and I am delighted. Even the concept of exactly why and how these body swaps happen is never really explained. I feel that these episodes are so much fun and so full of so much of what makes this series great that I'm willing to look past whatever hand-wavy alien military technology it is that got us here. Who is Scully?
I also, I know we'll get to it, but it's hilarious that the body swap happens, Mulder freaks out, and Fletcher is just like,
cool as a cucumber.
I'm just gonna fucking roll that. That is a hilarious choice.
Yes. All right, you ready for digging in there, Mr. Spock?
Always.
Since exploration and contact with alien intelligence is our primary mission, I've decided to risk the potential dangers and resume contact.
All right, now for a quick-ish Wikipedia-style summary. The Enterprise responds to a distress call from a seemingly lifeless planet in uncharted space. Upon arrival, a telepathic being named Sargon invites Kirk and his crew, including Lieutenant Commander Anne Mulhall, to beam down into their subterranean vault and rescue them from Oblivion. Ominous! On the planet, they meet Sargon, sort of. His subconscious is floating around inside a luminous sphere. The whole thing has IKEA lamp vibes. Sargon explains that he and 2 others, chilling in their own luminous spheres, are the last survivors of their race. Sargon body swaps with Kirk to monologue, 2 of a feather and all that, and he explains that he and his companions need to borrow their human bodies temporarily in order to construct android hosts for themselves. They offer an exchange of knowledge in return, an incredible gift considering that they are basically gods. Or maybe they're distant ancestors, unclear. After Kirk returns to his body, he declares his confidence in Sargon. Look, Kirk can't help himself, he's a big old nerd, and he's willing to put his life on the line to learn. Scotty hates the idea, McCoy hates the idea, Spock hates the idea, everybody hates the idea. It's a bad idea. But they decide to do it anyways after a rousing monologue from Kirk. He's got one trick, but it's a good one.
He has 2 tricks, monologues and sex magic.
Oh yes, he's got one trick, and then the sex. That's 2 tricks.
Sorry, I interrupted your flow.
No. It was a good note. Thank you for the note. After they perform the exchange, Sargon and Thalassa, his wife, because if you're immortal, why not have a monogamous wife, kiss a bunch and begin to work on androids. Hanak, in Spock's body, has a different idea, though. He wants to keep the bodies. He likes feeling. Ironic, since he's in Spock's body, huh? Hanak tries to kill Kirk and Sargon with a medicine switcheroo and through emotional manipulation of Thalassa. Look, He could give this android tits, but it wouldn't be like her own tits. Nothing like the real thing, Thalassa. It's a thing that he says. I mean, he doesn't say tits, but it's a weird scene. Thalassa tries to convince Sargon to forego the androids and steal these bodies instead, but fails when Sargon collapses and Kirk's body dies, killing both Kirk and Sargon. Thalassa offers to restore Kirk in exchange for McCoy's help in keeping Mulhall's body. When McCoy emphatically refuses, she assaults him telepathically, but then has a change of heart and relents. The voice of Sargon commends her, and she realizes that Sargon is using the ship itself as a temporary body. Thalassa and Sargon basically pull a body-swapping heist and trick Henoch into evacuating Spock's body. In the end, Sargon and Thalassa agree to join each other in Oblivion, and everyone is returned to their own bodies, but not until after they kiss erotically on the bridge one last time in front of the entire Enterprise crew. They've seen worse. What did you think of the episode?
I liked this episode a lot. I really enjoyed this one. I think that there was a lot of really great stuff. And like you said up top, it was disconcerting, but great to see Spock as not Spock.
Yeah.
I thought that Leonard Nimoy did a really, really good job with
fun,
this.
too. Like,
Yes.
this is like late in season 2. You've like established who Spock is. Even when you do Mirrorverse, you're still kind of Spock.
Right.
To get to like go all out and be like, oh, I'm a baddie.
Yeah, I love it. I love that his body language is so different. I said this while we were watching it, but like, why didn't Sargon know this was going to happen? Like, why would you keep the ruler of the people that, like, he explains to Kirk, we had such a horrific falling out that your human brain cannot comprehend what happened.
Yeah, we destroyed a whole planet.
And like an entire species of
capital D fucking destroyed.
Right. We like to the point that we obliterated the atmosphere and everything on the planet died. Like, and then it's like, but you know who I'm going to make sure survives? The number one enemy of my life. We're just going to put his consciousness in this little ball and I'm sure everything will work out fine. Wipe our hands of this. Like,
I think, well, I mean, Sargon, much in the way that Kirk is, they're both like idealists, right? It's like, I mean, I feel like that's a fucking Kirk move. Kirk would have done it. He gave Khan a whole fucking planet.
That's absolutely
It is
true.
like the optimist, like we went through a war together. We have to have learned from our mistakes, right? Right? And so I think he thinks we've been, A, we know that we destroyed this whole fucking planet. B, we've been floating around unconscious like little balls for like half a millennia. He has to have learned from his mistakes, right? And it's just like blind, foolish optimism.
Yeah, it's funny too, because you'd think of Sargon, who's like, all I want to do is probe the universe to like find a way for us to continue living, which is like the positive side of what they want. Wouldn't realize like that's what Henoch is doing, is sitting inside of this conscious ball, figuring out how the fuck am I going to never return to this conscious ball and how am I going to get away from this situation.
Right.
Like, he spent half a millennia plotting how to kill this man because Sargon won the war. Like, really, I mean, no one really won the war because they're all conscious beings inside of fucking IKEA lamps. But like,
or as one notable person who worked on it said, giant ping pong balls, I don't want to talk about it. I don't remember who said that, but it's somebody that definitely said it.
That's very funny.
It's the director of the episode.
Incredible.
I did think that those worked. Like, it's...
Yeah, it makes, it gets across the idea of, like, floaty nothing.
Right, and, like,
Ew.
the pretty lights worked for me, and I like that each of the...
I mean, I would buy the lamp.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I would put that
It's
in
a good
Mulder's
lamp.
new apartment, for sure, 100%.
It would go.
It would go. It would 100%.
That's another connection. Good at podcasting.
Good at podcasting. And I appreciated, too, the detail that each of the consciousness lights were different. Like, each one clearly contained a different person, which I thought was a really, like, good set design choice. Yeah, there was a lot about this I liked. I like sexy doctor lady reporting for duty. Like, I'm just, it's weird. I don't actually know who told
They're
me.
like, who are you? You're hot. We've never seen you before.
Yeah, I love the idea that, like, you see the Enterprise and I know it's enormous. Like, I know in my brain.
400 plus people.
Yeah, it's fucking huge. And at the same time, it feels like Kirk knows and appreciates and loves every single person on the ship. And yet, every episode, there are people that he's like, who the fuck are you?
New headcanon in this moment, Spock and McCoy try and keep him from knowing all the new hot girls who come on the ship. They're like, yeah, new crew, these 3 people, let's have distracting sex. It's like, he's going to find out eventually, but the longer we can put it off, the better.
But also in this, like, I think that it's a really good example of Kirk is a great captain because he's like, wow, this woman's really hot. But at the end, even while they're like literally in the middle of making out.
So rude of Sargon and Thalassa to exit the bodies mid-kiss. I feel like they were like, I don't know, we ship it.
Yeah. They're like, you know, you guys are both really good looking and we've probed your insides and like very compatible genetically.
Just try it out. Bye.
I know. But I like that Kirk like separates like from her physically and is like, great job. Like pats her on the arms.
Good job.
And I love too that she makes this very awkward face when Chapel says, that was beautiful. She's like, wow, I also acknowledge this was really fucking awkward.
This was weird for me.
Like, I'm on the bridge and like your two husbands are over there and like, I don't know, but I'm just going to go back to the microbiology lab.
Bye. So that actress is played by Diana Moldar, who she's in this episode, and then she's in another episode in season 3 of TOS, which I think we're actually watching this season. So you'll see her again, but she has like dark hair and it's different.
Ooh.
She's still banging hot. But notably, it's a big deal. She's a big deal in Star Trek because she comes back in Star Trek TNG and plays Dr. Pulaski. So when Bev leaves for like a season, Dr. Pulaski replaces her as the like chief medical officer on the Enterprise, and she's a whole fucking character. So she, as an actress, is a big deal in Star Trek.
She has a very Star Trek voice.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense that she's asked to come back. Like, she fits very well into this
She's
universe.
a good actress.
Yeah, definitely. This character is not like, not unlike the horniest historian in the fleet, where she's just like,
I'm good at my job.
I'm really good at my job. I'm willing to do like literally anything to learn what I can about my job because I'm already in space. And
yeah,
like,
she's the
what
only
can
one
go wrong?
during
Lots.
that scene.
Lots can go fucking wrong.
Yeah, lots can go wrong, turns out. She's the only one in that scene where like Kirk is trying to convince, like Kirk has to convince Spock and Scotty and McCoy. She's like, I'm down.
Yeah, she's like, this is
She's
such
a down
an
ass bitch.
I will never have an opportunity like this. This is a scientific discovery that we may never get a shot at again. Like, fuck it, sign me up, I'm in.
Like, I got a PhD for a reason. Let's use it.
Yeah, right? I'm just floating out here in space. No one even knew I was on this ship. Let's go!
It's also interesting that she is introduced as Lieutenant Commander, which means that she's the highest ranked named female Starfleet character in TOS, which is
Interesting.
also an interesting little tidbit.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that.
She's great. She does a great job in this episode. And she also, even though we don't know her and Mulhall as like a character, I think the actress does a good job of like, you've just met this person, but you can see the difference already of like Anne and Thalassa. Like,
Yeah.
you know when it's Thalassa, you know when it's Anne.
Yeah. I was going to say that same thing about Kirk, too. Like, he's doing a lot of body acting. There's a lot of body acting when he gets, like,
To see
yeah.
again.
Yeah, like,
Air in the lungs.
which feels like these are the moments that people who've never actually watched Star Trek pull from and are like,
And they put them
that's-
in like silly like fan videos
Yeah,
and stuff, which
they're
like
like-
they're great visual gags, but
Right, and it's like, that's the kind of stuff I expected from Shatner knowing nothing about TOS, and it's interesting to see, like, these are actually departures from, it was the same way in the other body swap episode where, yeah, like, the things that he does when the lady,
Janice
Lester?
Lester.
Yeah.
I was like, Lecter is not right.
she does cannibalize his body. No, that's
Yeah.
not correct. But
We love stretches here on our
I mean, it's true. But I like that those, like, he makes very specific choices about what's happening when Kirk is having his body taken over.
Right.
And they are very visually stimulating. And so I like that he makes these choices, even though it's weird that popular culture pulled that in and was like, that's Shatner acting.
That's how he acts.
Yeah, which is like, he's acting very hard, but it's a choice.
It's a good choice in that moment. This being has existed as like a cloud of like thought for half a millennia. He gets a body and it's like, whoa, fuck, I forgot what it felt like to breathe and see, and oh my god, I'm gonna touch my face. This is a fine ass body, don't you think?
I love that he compliments Bones, like, you've both done a great job maintaining this body. And Spock's like, I did shit too, thank you very much. Like, I love that. I think that scene is great. I also really like that there's a whole panel about consent. It's not about, like, the X-Files episode is the total opposite of that. Like, everyone is non-consensually swapped, smushed together horrifically with, like, rocks and their lovers and whatever. But this is absolutely about consent. And so I love the idea, especially in the fucking 60s, about these godlike beings being like,
who could just take over.
could do whatever, and are very clear about the fact that, like, we can do whatever we fucking want, but it's really important to us that you agree to this transfer. And I like that there's this whole panel where he, as a show of what a good captain does, says, he's like, I could make this decision. I could order all of you to do this, but it's also important to me that you make this consensual choice in order to do this body swap. It's just really smart and really progressive writing that, like, does not feel like it fits in with the 60s. So I really enjoyed that. I thought that that was a really great choice. Made a note about how, obviously this dude is going to betray you.
Yeah, when you think of Hennock, I don't know why Sargon just wasn't like, hey, I'm going to inhabit one of your bodies. I will build these robots, and then we'll just transfer these. I mean, I think maybe he was like, we could do it faster with 3, but, like,
Yeah.
I feel like you should have just put Hennock directly into an android and been like, fine, you're an android
we're not
now,
even
whatever.
fucking around with this.
Also, who built the spheres? Why don't you just build androids?
Yeah.
Whatever.
There's a lot of confusing stuff about the building, too, where I think it might be McCoy, it might have been Scotty in this, like, consent panel. It's like, why don't they just give us the drawings? Like, give us the diagrams about how to build this
they're
stuff.
Like, your tiny brains couldn't handle building an android to our specifications.
Yeah, and, like, maybe. That's maybe true. But at the same time, it's like, okay. I mean, actually, I guess I just sort of talked myself into that. I guess the idea is, like, we literally can't dumb it down enough for you in order to, like, get you to do this correctly. And so we just have to do it.
There's that scene with Scotty being like, this is bullshit. None of this is going to work. You need gears and shit. And Thalasa's like, no, that's bullshit. That's not going to work. I mean, it will work, but it's, like, not a good idea. This is better. The goo and whatever is better. It'll work better. Trust me. And Scotty's like,
although I love that in the consent panel, all Kirk had to say was, engine the size of a walnut. Scotty's like, you son of a bitch, I'm in. Like,
that is totally the energy Scotty has. You could just see the fucking joy in his face.
Oh my God, he's so excited. It's like, teach me engineering of gods, must learn.
Sidebar, the gods did not teach them shit.
No.
Or if they did, we did not see any of that stuff.
They do leave the android behind.
That's true.
And so they do have this android, and then later in what I assume are the following iterations of Star Trek, like TNG comes later, they have androids.
Yeah, but kind of not. It's a whole mess.
All right.
We have not the time.
Fair enough. But that's what I assume is that, like, okay, it's like when McCoy leaves the communicator behind, where it's like, okay,
piece of action?
Piece of action. When you, like, can't learn everything, but you can reverse engineer just enough to, like, okay, we can figure this out. And also being told this knowledge exists and you can reach it also does things to people. Especially, like,
if you try hard enough, you'll become telepathic.
For real. You'll get lots of powers. And, like, I like, too, that Thalasia is like, you think that you're a great surgeon, but you don't know shit, Bones. Like, you think what you're doing right now is such an improvement. Like, Kirk says, like, if man was supposed to fly, he would have wings. Just kidding. We figured it out.
Right.
You as a doctor, your great-great-great-great-great-grandpappy used scalpels and cat's guts. But look at all this shit that we have. And for Bones to be confronted so directly with what you're doing is basically scalpels and cat gut. You can do so much more. That, for a human, ignites parts of your brain where you're like, I have to figure it out. Because when you feel like you've reached...
Especially if you're like a fucking Starfleet officer. That's why you're there in the first place.
Right, exactly. Because, like, in some ways they feel like they've reached the pinnacles of human technology and they're like, we're trying to explore this, like, space so that we can figure out how to give this knowledge to other people. Like, they feel like they've reached that status where they're disseminating information. And it's like, nah, bro, you could learn so much fucking more, like way more than you think that you can. And so I think that in that sense, they do give them quite a lot. It's just not in the way that we think of, like, here, let me teach you a lesson. Mm-hmm. Let me show you how this actually works. And so I like that because I think it's very true to human nature, where people are driven by the unknown, but we're even more driven by, like, just a fucking salt fleck of information. Like, oh, I can see that this exists. even in theory, let me fucking figure this
all
shit
of
out.
Star Trek is that.
Yeah.
Like, in theory, we could have warp. In theory, we could have communicators. In theory, we could have iPads, essentially. They're fucking called pads. Like, that salt flag helped.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that while you're right, like, they don't really teach them all that much, it does plant these kernels which will grow into, like, actual plants and seeds and flowers of information. So I did enjoy that a lot. I did think it was really weird that Hennock was like, no. I don't want to be in an android that'll live for 1,000 years and then I can build another one and then another one. He's like, I want to stay in this human body or this Vulcan body, which will die. Like,
I have that thought every time I think this. And the only way I can, like, get myself out of that is that there's that scene between Sargon and Thalassa where Thalassa says, these bodies will get used to us eventually. So maybe a part of that also, like, they can, like,
control their aging process or whatever.
That's the only way I can even begin to justify it, and that seems paltry. Like, wouldn't you? I guess you can't feel shit. But also, like, aren't you guys, like, so smart? Couldn't you theoretically be in your android body, start thinking, learn new things, and then figure out how to make
sensors? Yeah, like, it's strange. It's such a weird choice. And also, like...
And to point it out, thousands of years. Like, you could live for thousands of years in these androids, or you could maybe live for... Vulcans live to, like, 200. Humans live around 100. That seems lame.
Yeah. And it's like, are you going to continue to conscious jump to new people? And, like, maybe, but then you have to do essentially the same work as you would with an android, where you have to search out people who are, like, specifically designed to be able to take this, and then you have to spend years conditioning this body and like, hope it doesn't die.
Injecting yourself with, like, a weird medicine and
it just
also bold of Sargon to be like, Hennock, why don't you go make the medicine?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, I guess technically he was in Spock's body, which is better, blah blah blah. But like, should have probably double checked.
Yeah, and like, is his? I don't know. Whatever. That's a yada yada yada. Let's hand wave this away in a way.
Sargon was like, I'm gonna have to kiss my wife, and I feel like Spock would not appreciate me taking his body and kissing another woman, but Kirk probably would be super down. And consent to me is important, so I'll just hop into Kirk because I want to fuck my wife.
And she says too, this body is not unlike yours, and so I think that's part of it. Is he's like, Kirk will consent to this.
Vanity.
And also, I know that my wife will be attracted to this body that I'm in, which is important too. Like,
but then he's like, no, beloved, don't touch me. We mustn't give in to our feelings. We can have, our minds will intertwine. I love that line because you can even hear in Sargon's voice being like, yeah, we're that's not going to be the same. Yeah, but our minds will touch, maybe. I also like that kiss of death.
I like how they're like, listen, we can kiss, but if we fuck, we're never leaving these bodies. Like, that's never gonna happen. Like, that sex magic, that's keeping us here forever. So I appreciated that too. I also love that as a series, Star Trek is like so vehemently and loudly and explicitly opposed to, as McCoy calls it, peddling of human flesh. Like, again, very progressive for the 60s to be so like, no. And I know it's Gene Roddenberry who's like, capitalism is wrong and it leads to all humans being like trapped in the...
Also fuck zippers.
Yeah, like, fuck zippers. That's the peddling of human flesh. I'm gonna zip my human flesh in the zipper and I'll never use one again. So I appreciate that. I like that McCoy is like, no, I don't. This woman is not me. I can't consent for this woman to give you her body. She may. You can ask her if you'd like, but I'm not her and I'm not willing to make this trade. Like, that's not my body to give away, and I refuse to do that. I really, really like that they're so explicitly clear about that.
Even when my captain, my friend, my lover is like dying.
Right, exactly. He's like, oh, you could fix my lover, but I have to make this trade of another human being's body. I won't do it. I really like that. I like that they're so explicitly clear about this.
Can we talk about the romantic music when Kirk and McCoy are reunited? I was like, this is a bold music choice. I approve, but like, okay.
They use so much sexy music the whole time. It's like, oh shit, we didn't pay for enough
then
other
it's just like,
music.
Oh, Jim.
Yeah.
And I was like,
and he's like,
this is
"Lit
a beautiful
sexy
moment.
too."
I approve.
I'm like, it's like when Spock thinks that Kirk is dead and then he sees him and he's, oh, Jim, and there's that like big smile of actual Spock. It felt like that, where it's like, you are dead. I really thought you were dead. I really thought there was no way to fix this. And I come into this room and you're just back.
And not just, well, amok time too, not just dead. I fucking killed you. And in that moment, I think McCoy probably is like, I killed this person because I, as a medical doctor, said this was okay.
Right, yeah. I gave the consent that I could, like, keep this manageable, and I couldn't. And it's my fucking fault that you died. And so to see that, like, I'm alive again, I just thought it was a great choice, if confusingly sexy.
Hey, most of Star Trek.
I also thought that fucking Chapel did a great job of inhabiting Spock when his consciousness takes over her body. I knew immediately.
Yeah, you did.
Fucking
You're like,
immediately.
well, Spock's in there.
Because they show her walking out of the room, and even before they showed the consciousness orbs were destroyed, I was like, she is walking weird. Like, because she makes great acting choices. Because
it's a good Chapel episode.
Yeah, because she's normal Chapel, where she's like, oh, well, Spock doesn't love me, whatever. I guess I'll just exist as Bones' friend or whatever.
And then Hannock is like, hey, sexy lady. And she's like, I know it's not Spock, but this is a moment I've lived for.
I've been dreaming about this forever. But then when he, like, wipes her memory and she's very, like, confused, that kind of, like, she's almost...
She moves in, like, a fog.
Yeah, it's not, like, robotic necessarily, but it's clearly un-Chapel-like in the way that we've seen her up to that. And then the choices that she makes as Spock inside of her body...
Like rigid spine.
Yeah, are very different from the choices that she's made as, like, fog brain Chapel. And so I like that it's immediately clear that that's what's happening, if you know that that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And I knew immediately that's what I was looking for. Like, obviously they're not going to kill Spock. I've seen episodes from season 3. Like, I know he doesn't die. And many movies, also Kirk would blow up this whole fucking ship to bring him back. Like, I already know this stuff. And so I thought it was great to see Chapel make these acting choices. Like, she does a fucking phenomenal job
like,
of this.
We shared a consciousness.
Right? I love it. She
looks directly at Spock and says that, and then Kirk, who's looking at Chapel, turns around with a delighted shit-eating grin, looks at Spock, and Spock just turns his head and stares off into the middle distance. And it is perfect facial acting from everyone on board.
And it's also like a really great example of consent, where Chapel would agree to that.
Yeah.
That's not uncharacteristic for Chapel to be like, hell yeah, put Spock inside my body. I would love that shit. Put him right up on in here. Let's go. Like,
Let's do it.
So I really like that. And I like, too, that, like, her choices when she's standing on the deck next to not Spock, Hannock as Spock, are smart and they're calculated. And, like, for someone who doesn't know what Chapel looks like, of course he's not going to notice. Like, that worked really well. I did think it's a little weird that he, maybe because Hannock wasn't trying to read Chapel's mind, like, doesn't realize that it's
I think
Spock.
he just assumed that she was being weird, and he whammied her already. So, like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I can accept that hand wavy yada yada.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Maybe he wasn't trying to read her mind because he was like, oh, her mind's fucked.
Yeah,
I've
he's
been in
like,
there.
yeah,
I'm the one that fucked it up.
Yeah, I don't need to worry about this. That's why she's acting all whatever over here next to me. Like,
Yeah.
I thought and the fact that he's like, okay, inject him with the thing. I don't need to focus on you because I've already got you under my timey-wimey wada wada yada magic. Like, it works. It's just a little confusing in that moment.
Yeah.
But overall, I thought it worked really well. And also, like, I love the line, Oblivion together does not frighten me. It's
like a
legit
surprisingly
made me
romantic
tear up.
line.
Yeah, it was very romantic. And again, we sort of talked about this, or we did talk about this in How the Ghost Stole Christmas, where it's two people making a decision to be intertwined forever. And, like, they sort of already have been. They live for half a millennia inside of these spheres.
And who knows how long they lived before that war? They could be thousands and
billions
thousands
of
yeah,
years
who
old.
knows?
Exactly.
They've evolved past aging or whatever. Oh.
Hand wavy, whatever. So I thought that was very romantic, and I thought it was a really great way to end that episode. And I also, like, I I know I already sort of said this before, but I love that they like have this kiss and then they're like pulled out of this consciousness back into their regular bodies, and everyone's just like staring at them like, that's weird, right? Like, we watch him flirt with the husbands all the time, but like, you don't usually
And we know he
kiss
like
people.
kisses a ton of other people, but like, this is weird on the bridge.
This is your job, bro. What is happening? And they're just like, whoop, never mind.
And Chapel's like, it's so romantic.
And everyone's
It's
like, shut up, Chapel.
Same Chapel. Same.
It was very romantic.
It was.
But also, like, we have jobs to do. Let's return to our regular lives and pretend this never fucking happened the Star Trek way.
I don't know. I do kind of hate how easily Kirk was willing to sacrifice Spock in this episode, because we know that he thinks Spock is dead, because then Sargon is like, I could never kill a friend so good as yours, or whatever. I don't know. Sargon ships it. But it just feels a little weird, but maybe like Sargon was like, it's the only way, oh my God, I made the decision, and Kirk just had to go along with it.
It feels like also Kirk is aware they could destroy all of us.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't want to lose this friend necessarily. And he is very sad the second he's like, oh my God, Spock's dead, my best friend. I'm so sad about this. But like, in exchange for everyone else on this ship, this is the right choice. And
it's the right choice. It's a choice he never makes again.
Well, maybe that's why. He's like, I went through the pain of losing you.
That's my personal headcanon, is he was like, wow, hated that, never doing it again.
Yeah, like, I experienced 4 whole seconds of you being dead, and I'm really upset about it.
Hated that, never again.
Going forward, I will kill a planet in order to keep you alive.
To be fair, no one lives on the planet. But.
Okay, fine.
Okay. I just like, you've never seen it, and that does seem like he committed genocide.
I trust that Kirk would not commit planet-wide genocide.
Yeah. Safe bet. Yeah, I don't know. I just think this episode was really good, and I'm glad that you really liked it. It's one of those ones that, like, I never really think to watch, and then every time I watch it, I'm like, this episode fucking rules. And I don't know why we don't talk about how much this episode fucking rules. It is, on one hand, a very classic Star Trek episode, because they're dealing with, like, aliens that they don't know, and they're excited about discovery, and the aliens are, like, very godlike, and Gene Roddenberry, like, fucking always writes episodes that are like, what if the aliens were godlike and we defeated God?
Let's kill God. Very Stella Cheeks.
There's a reason I love Captain Kirk.
I'm going to fight God.
Why would God need a spaceship?
Why is God angry?
Well, that's true to canon.
Anyway, Star Trek V, best Star Trek movie. Moving on. Yeah, it's just there is a quote from Michelle Erica Green of Trek Today, and she talks about how she likes this episode because it's a really good Nimoy acting episode, like to see, it's alien seeing Spock smile and stuff. But she also wrote, Shatner portrayed Sargon in an amplified, booming, benevolent voice that makes a nifty contrast to his would-be Kennedy-esque speechifying, expounding on the values that sent humans to the stars. Green observes, the skepticism of godlike beings runs very deep in this series. And, like, it really does, and this episode encapsulates that. And I like that we get to see Kirk give a, like, rousing, like, monologue that's like, we have to reach for the stars, and that's why you got into Starfleet, right? Like, we should do this. And then we also get all of these monologues from Sargon, too, and it's just like, these two fucking queens love to give monologues.
Sargon was like, I have been probing the universe for a millennia. That one.
Yeah. He was like, he'll get it. And I think that also, like, goes to that line when Kirk, so they do the initial body swap in the subterranean basement or whatever, and then when they swap back, Kirk is like, well, when we switch, like, our consciousness passed each other and we understood each other. Like, we not only did we swap bodies or swap IKEA lamps or whatever, like, we connected, like, we had that connection, which I think is really fascinating if you think about it. Like, Thalassa and Anne have that too, probably, because I'm just assuming that's part of the process. But can you imagine being Spock and being like, oh no, this guy's gonna steal my body?
Yeah. Yes.
Whoops. Well, I guess we just gotta trust these guys to figure it out, because if not, I'm fucked.
Yeah. Yes.
And Hanok being like, yeah, bye, buddy.
LOL, psych.
Psych. I just think it's a really, really good episode. I think there's, like, some really interesting things about it too, like that a really fun, like, interesting whatever. Who do you think is the voice of Sargon? Well, you can see the notes.
I mean, I'm not
Don't
looking
look.
at I'm
Don't
not
look.
looking at the notes. I don't know. I just assumed that it was Kirk.
It's Jimmy Doohan.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I would never have guessed
It's
that.
great, right?
Wow, that's pretty fucking cool.
No
Good for
wonder
him.
he voices half of the cast of the animated series.
For real.
He's good at voice acting.
Yes, he is very good. I never would have guessed. I literally just assumed that it was Shatner.
Yeah, it's great.
That's excellent.
I loved it. So I talked about that monologue where Kirk is talking about, like, going to space and do you wish that Apollo moon program never went to the moon and onto Mars? What's really fascinating about this, and you as like a NASA nerd, like obviously the first Apollo mission did not go to Mars and it took a bunch of like things, but it was filmed before that happened and it's just an idea that people are talking about.
That was the plan too, is like, we're going to keep doing space exploration and then like, nah.
I just think
Wow.
it's really fascinating to me. Like, we're creating the show about exploration and the stars, and like we're capturing the imagination of the American people. This is a very popular TV show. Simultaneously, America has like space fever and there's the space race, and it is just so fascinating that they were like, yeah, of course it's gonna work. We're just gonna write it, and it works eventually, kind of. But it's just, I just think it's a really interesting just snapshot of what it was like to be in 1967. Like,
yeah, right before they go to the
Right.
moon. Because they are like, the Gemini program is actively happening. Like, this stuff is happening. They know, like, okay, we can get up there. We
Right.
can, like, put a man around the Earth's atmosphere. Like, Russia has done this. And at some point, we're going to come together as a species and work together. Which does happen. Like, we take Russia's rockets to space all the time because we as the United States have fully defunded our space travel program,
Yeah,
which is
America
dumb
sucks.
as hell. Space Force, ugh, thumbs down. So yeah, I like that. I like how eternally optimistic Star Trek is about how humans will come together for the greater good. Yeah, which has not really happened
but
in many ways.
Hope lives eternal in Star Trek.
For real.
And this is one of two episodes, I think, that talk about the Apollo moon program. There's another episode called Tomorrow is Yesterday, which honestly probably should have been the episode I chose for NASA, but I made my choices. We'll be watching it at a later date. I made my choices. It maybe was a mistake, but whatever. Like, it is just, I just think it's really fascinating, especially from like a writer's perspective, to be like, I mean, we're writing a show about fucking space. Like, we have to talk about the actual space program, but we also don't know what the fuck is happening with the actual space program. Well, let's just put it on TV.
Yeah.
And also, can you imagine like watching it in 1967 and being like, fuck yeah, the Apollo missions are going to rule. And then when it comes around 10 months later, be like, everyone tunes in, and like people would have tuned in anyways. But I think it just helped to build the like space mania. I don't know what it was called. I'm sure it has a fun nickname.
I mean, yeah, it's a space mania.
It's space mania. Another interesting thing about this, especially considering that you pulled out that line, like, Oblivion doesn't scare me. So the writer of this, John T. Duggan, originally wrote this script, and he wrote that Thalassa and Sargon were going to continue their existence as spirits without bodies floating around the universe. And Gene Roddenberry was like,
no space ghosts.
no space ghosts. Also, like, fuck religion. They're going to die. They're going into oblivion. Like, Gene Roddenberry was like, nope. And then Duggan, who is a devout Catholic, was really upset about it. And he wrote, that line totally went against my philosophy and cosmology. I didn't want to be associated with it. The Oblivion idea is Roddenberry's philosophy, not mine. That might be a small thing, but I have a reputation and a philosophy, and everybody who knows me knows what I stand for. I certainly don't stand for Oblivion in the afterlife. When you write a script, you don't expect to have your worldview changed by the producer. The rest of Roddenberry's changes were all trivial. The big thing was the change in this episode's philosophy. Like, he was pissed about it. He also was really mad about the line where Sargon is talking in the bunker or whatever, is like, I keep calling you my children because, like, you probably are my children. Like, we sent people out into the universe to explore and, like, colonize and populate. And, like, your Adam and Eve were, probably distant relations to me. And Duggan, who is, like, Catholic, was like, hate that, dislike.
Because that is something that, like, is an idea inside of philosophy, is that that's how the universe is created, that people just become so powerful that they create their own universes because they become gods, because really that's that's what you do when you fuck around with atoms. Like, you're creating universes, and like, we don't really know what's gonna fucking happen. So I really liked that. I thought that was like a really smart choice.
Well, it's the seer theory too. We've talked about it a little bit, but like with like Paradise Syndrome and stuff, like that is a big theory in Star Trek that is explored, especially in later dates. But it's like part of the reason most aliens have this like humanoid shape or whatever is because like there is a common ancestor, and it's all like everything's connected in the universe, and they all come from like a single source or whatever. But specifically to that Adam and Eve line, the reason that Anne Mulhall says that line, our beliefs and our studies indicate that life on our planet Earth evolved independently, like got inserted into that script to be like, you know, maybe Adam and Eve are descended from you or maybe not.
Yeah.
Please don't write in about how you're offended. Please just watch the show about space.
Yeah.
Which I think is really funny because the show isn't a show about religion a lot. And when it is, it like tiptoes around it. But then every once in a while, Gene Roddenberry's like, get fucked, kill God.
Oh, man. I want that tattooed on my body. Get fucked, kill God.
I mean,
that fucking rules.
also, a bunch of the names that were used. So, like, Thalassa in Greek mythology is a sea goddess. Some Assyrian and Mesopotamian kings were named Sargon. And in the Bible, Enoch is the, like, father of Methuselah. And so they were like, oh, Enoch, we'll use that. So I also think that it's really fascinating that Jim T. Duggan, who is, like, this devout Catholic, but obviously cares and thinks about the idea of religion, is like, oh, let me pull these names from, like, philosophy and from religion. And it's just interesting that this episode that has nothing to do with religion has a bunch of like religious ties, and you know, in the end, get fucked, kill God.
100%. That's a philosophy I can get on board with.
Yeah, I love this episode, and I wish more people would watch it, and I hope everybody listening to this did watch it, or if they didn't, are like, you know what, I'm gonna fucking watch it because it rules.
Yeah, I would agree. Synopsis showdown?
Okay, mine's not good.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, we've said this before, but it's hard to write them for your own episodes.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, mine's also long.
Mine's pretty long too, actually.
There's a lot happens in this episode. A lot goes on. Okay. Godlike aliens convince Kirk and the gang to, quote, temporarily body swap with them so that they can build android bodies, a thing that they probably should have done instead of transferring their bodies into giant luminous spheres. I don't know, seems like a giant oversight. Anyways, they have a crisis of consciousness, 1,000 million years in the making, and fuck off into Oblivion instead. Kirk and the gang, who were literally just around and kind of an afterthought for the ride. I don't know. Honestly, I don't really know what that last sentence said. My handwriting totally shit out. I think it would have taken me 10 more minutes to decipher my own handwriting. So I'm calling a mulligan on that one. What's yours?
Space gods pull the crew in order to get consent to use their bodies to build them roboties, but psych, it's too much temptation, so we'll just elaborately trick Spock/Enoch into vacating the body, kiss one last time, and drift off into Oblivion together. Chapel also finally gets Spock inside of her. Everyone wins!
Everyone wins! I love that you wrote roboties. That is hilarious. Oh, this is just my robody.
This is my robody.
I'm going to cryo-freeze my brain, and then I'm going to get a robody.
Yeah, totally.
Honestly, somebody patent it. Let's go. Let's make this money. Somebody buy the domain. Are you ready for Moldar? It's me.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Or no, Scully, it's me. Scully, it's me.
Scully! Scully, you bastard, tell the truth! Scully, he's not me! He's not me! Scully, he's not me!
All right, here's a not quick. This is not going to be quick.
Well, you got 2 episodes.
Yeah, I got 2 episodes to cover, so
Godspeed.
Thank you. Here's the Dreamland
or
summary.
not Godspeed.
You kill God. Right,
Yeah,
exactly. All right. Mulder and Scully, as they are wont to do, drive out into the desert to investigate a mysterious information crash, unclear at this point, at the Area 51 site, but are intercepted by military police led by Men in Black Morris Fletcher. Suddenly, a craft flies overhead and a ripple goes out and body swaps Mulder and Fletcher, but just them for some reason. Mulder is taken back to live Morris's truly terrible life, while Morris gets to return with Scully to fuck around to his heart's content. Mulder discovers that there are multiple other body swaps that occurred at the same time, including a man fusing with a rock, and a native woman and a military pilot swapping who are being held under observation observation at the facility. While the real Mulder tries to convince Scully that he is truly Mulder, Scully does not believe him, but is very skeptical when Mulder as Fletcher suggested they report this bizarre phone call to the higher-ups, because literally when has Mulder ever reported anything, including things he definitely should have reported before? Very suspicious.
Would I do that? Would I do this? You know I wouldn't.
You're making really good points. Scully receives more information from Mulder's military source and tries to bring it to his attention, only to find him fucking around with Kirsch's assistant. Again, very un-Mulder-like in many ways. For a man who watches a lot of porn, he does not get laid. It's not a thing that happens, like, fucking ever. He doesn't have a bed. He's never had a bed. Scully, now suspicious and curious, decides to head back out to the desert and finds more weird shit, leading her to Fletcher's house, where Mulder tries again to convince her of his real identity. Fletcher, desperate to not return to his terrible life, gets Mulder set up as being the source of information leak and has him dragged away. Seeing this, Scully finally starts to realize that this cannot be Mulder. Mulder would never burn a source. He will literally believe anyone and anything and will do anything to protect them, including her losing her life, probably. It's like, this is very strange. In part 2, Mulder convinces the other men in black that actually he's not the informant. He was just fucking with the FBI for kicks, and really it's all of you who are untrustworthy, which somehow works. Very Mulder. Fletcher convinces Scully to come over to Mulder's apartment so he can make her dinner and apologize for turning in Fletcher to Kirsch and also getting her suspended without pay for 2 weeks. Again, she's very suspicious. But not until after he gives Mulder's bum-ass apartment a makeover! Seriously, this man has not had a bed for 6 seasons! She didn't know he had a bedroom. Scully catches Fletcher out and demands that he help her restore Mulder into his correct body. After setting up a meeting with Mulder's informant, they all wind up together at a bar like some kind of zany sex comedy, and Fletcher discovers that it's his boss who's actually the informant. The general confesses to having tampered with the spacecraft because he wanted Mulder to see it. Turns out he really wants to know if aliens are real, and they got this military technology from fuck knows where and fuck knows how. The general gives Mulder as Fletcher the data recorder from the craft, and Mulder as Fletcher confronts him in the bathroom. After white wine is spilled, zany sex comedy shit. After some scuffling, they all flee and nothing is resolved. Real Mulder and Scully have a conversation where she tells him that she doesn't think that they can return to their correct bodies. It's actually very sad and romantic. But wait, for some reason, the body swap ripple has started to undo itself. So the military men take everyone back to the location where they were swapped and wait for the alien magic to do its work. In the meantime, Mulder as Fletcher goes to his house, reveals to his wife that what Mulder as Fletcher has been saying is true. They really were body swapped and he really is stuck like this. Yada, 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 hand wavy. They go back to the desert and everything is set right because of reasons. Except for Mulder's apartment, which the aliens were like, for real, dude, you really needed this. So they allow him to keep it. How did you feel about these 2 episodes?
I mean, these episodes are great.
Yes.
Right? These are good. I mean, I knew that they were going to be good with the way that people talk about them. Also because I've seen that GIF a million times.
Which GIF?
The GIF of him with the crazy face.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, these episodes are great. I do want to say up top, I think it is narratively brilliant. And I know lots of body swap stuff does it, but especially compared to watching what we did with actually both body swap episodes in Star Trek, you really it's the acting challenge of this is my body, I'm a different person, or this isn't my body, I'm a different person inside here, I'm going to make different choices than if I were Captain Kirk. It is really narratively and visually great that they're the actors are going to be themselves and then we'll just show them in the mirror oh no, this guy isn't Mulder. And because it leads to really funny and dynamic shots and moments. And it would have worked the other way, I still think. Mm-hmm. It would have worked if it was a traditional body swap Freaky Friday comedy or whatever. But I really like the visual choice that they made because it's just funny to watch Mulder have an interaction with a child or
yes.
To have a wife and be I don't know, I just like to watch porn.
Right, yes.
I don't think you should get plastic surgery. Oh, you wanted a nose ring? Well, that narratively works really well for the show.
Yeah, I agree. And also because at this point, we don't know Fletcher at all. And
right.
So it would be really difficult to establish that him as Mulder and Mulder as him. I think that just making the decision to actually swap them for the audience, it's clearer. It's a lot easier to follow.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Also, I mean, the casting of Michael Mckean is great.
Oh,
he's
so
a
good.
great actor. And especially because I feel a lot of what I've seen Michael Mckean in is more funny, slapsticky stuff. But he plays gross fucking middle-aged like dirtbag
So well.
terribly well.
Yes. Upsettingly well.
I mean, the moment when he slapped Scully's ass, my like mouth dropped open, and you were like, "Yeah, right." It's the worst. Honestly, how she didn't in that moment be like, "Not Mulder."
Yeah. He's been calling me Dana for 2 whole days and he just touched my ass. Like, what the fuck is happening?
I mean, I know narratively they had to like draw it out or whatever, but like if he was acting that weird, and then you got a full phone call that was like, "Hey, that's not mean," I feel like she should have been like, "Oh, right, that
It's
makes a
not
lot
you."
of sense." That does track a lot. Okay, good. Especially since like we've seen Small Potatoes, which isn't a body swap, but it is like a body inhabit whatever. Like she has seen a person inhabit Mulder wrong before. She should have been like, "This seems familiar.
Yeah.
This seems worse."
Yes.
Actually,
I do like, too, that they do a really good job of her being like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like, multiple times
she's like, "I'm just having an off day," and she's like, "Oh, you think?"
Yeah, I'm literally considering having you check for mental illness or like a concussion. Like, what the fuck is going on? I like that choice. And like Mulder says, when Mulder as Fletcher, she's at his house, she's like, "This is so improbable." He's like, "God, that is so you. This is the most Scully thing fucking ever. Are you kidding me right now?" She's
We've
like,
seen so much crazy shit.
yeah, like, why don't you ever believe? God, will you never learn? She's like,
Will
no.
you never believe?
She's like, no, I won't. I will not. I refuse.
I also think the writing was really interesting because for the whole time, for like the first episode until we like find out more information of like what caused the body swap, I was like, man, if I was going to perpetuate a body swap, I would learn literally anything about this dude so that I could like be better at not like giving like inklings like, what's wrong with you? But then to know like, oh, he didn't plan shit, this just happened, makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Especially he's like, "Oh, FBI, we follow rules." And it's like, no, we don't. We don't do that.
We do not do that.
But it would be a safe assumption, right?
Right, exactly. And also he's like, I can live this life doing this. Everyone else at the FBI will accept that I've gone back to Mulder before. And
Right.
also at the beginning of the second episode, he does. He
Yeah, and
learns
it
about his life.
Shows that he did research because he was like, well, I guess if I'm doing this, like, I got to know something about him. And he's like, oh, he was smart and stuff. And then he went wackadoo. Got it.
He was 2 seconds away from pushing a baby carriage full of tin cans down the street. Like, you nailed it. You nailed this, Fletcher. You understood the assignment exactly.
It is so bizarre, though, that the body swap happens and he goes, "I accept," and just hops in the car.
Well, once you see his life, it's like, yeah, I can see why. You have a very dangerous job that's very high stress with a lot of weird backstabby bullshit going on, and your home life is a train wreck.
A train wreck that he created.
He created,
like,
oh, for sure. But, like, it's interesting, too, because she's convinced that he's cheating on her.
She being Fletcher's wife.
Fletcher's wife, yeah, Joanne.
Who does a great job.
Fantastic. She's so well cast.
Because even though that they, like, write her to like be quote naggy or whatever, like I agree with everything she's saying.
Yeah.
This guy sucks and is a douche and like
yes.
is mean to her, and team Joanne.
Yeah, for sure. 100% can't disagree with any of
Yeah.
that. But I like too that he's like, he's not that kind of dirtbag. He doesn't appear to be cheating on her.
Right.
He's not like living a double life somewhere.
He's just the type of person that would be like, oh, the ball and chain.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's like, oh God.
Yeah, he's
You're
just
the worst.
He's a dude who's married to his job, which is very dangerous and like is similar to Mulder in many ways, where it's like, my life is my work, and like, oh, I made these decisions that I've got to live with now. Maybe I don't. And like, so I can understand why he's like, woo, I'm in this really good looking body. Let's get in the car and drive the fuck away from here. Like, that tracks for me. I can totally see why someone would make that decision.
It is interesting that the Michael Mckean character, like that scene when they go to the lone gunman and he like knows who they are. So like maybe he also did know a lot about Mulder, and he was like, because it's not unreasonable to assume that like Mulder, a man who has broken into several military facilities, has a rep. Like we know he has a rep later when he's confronting the general, because he's like, why did you give me this information? He's like, well, who the fuck else am I going to give it to?
Yeah,
like,
obviously I went to you.
yeah, I assume you know more. I want to know things. So this is like an exchange of information. So it is also interesting to be like, oh, I'm in Fox Mulder's body? Okay.
Yeah.
And then like going and interacting with the lone gunman too, to be like, oh, you guys You guys really make my life easy because I come up with this crazy shit and you guys just print it and they're like, wait, no, that's real. And he's like, man, some of it's real, but that's not real.
Yeah, yes. I really enjoyed that. And you pointed out, too, Frohickey immediately is like, I'm gonna fight this bitch. Like,
Honestly, I loved that.
yes, you can tell that, like, there are many times where Mulder, like, pretends that they're not his friends in lots
They're
of
his
ways.
friends.
But they are his friends.
Yeah.
And it's clear he, like, comes over and has dinner sometimes. And, like, they know and care about him and are really willing to risk it and do, like, literally, spoiler, die for him at one point. Like, they care about him a lot. And so they are 100% willing to accept, especially when they're like, that's bullshit. There's no way. And Scully's like, it's not. It's definitely real. And they're like, Scully believes it. We're in. Like,
Yeah.
they are in 100%. And Frohickey's like, I may be a foot and a half shorter than you. I will literally kick your kneecaps out. Like, I love those
I know how to
choices.
fight dirty.
Yeah.
Hello.
I'm very short. I will fight dirty.
I just like also because I haven't seen a lot of episodes with the Lone Gunman, I've only seen a couple and I like know them tangentially through like doing this podcast with you guys and learning about them, but also like through like pop culture, blah, blah, blah. It was a really good scene for them. Like, I
Yes.
think if I had known nothing about this, which would be a weird set of episodes to watch, not knowing anything about it, but I think that they do a really good job anytime that they show up, at least from my perspective of being like, I know exactly who these people are. I do care about them, even though I don't know them
Yes.
very well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I really liked Frohickey a lot. I was like, Team Frohickey, really, honestly.
It's funny, too, because, like, what little you know of Frohickey and the stuff that you've seen from your season 1 watch, like, he's like a weird perv, and it makes sense that he and Mulder are friends.
Yeah, it makes
but
sense that he's the one that's like, but Mulder's like my friend. And the other ones are like, we're like work colleagues. So he's like, no, me and Mulder are pervs together.
Yeah, we're really good friends. We exchange porn tapes. We've got this, like, whole swap thing going on.
Oh, I love that. It is, I mean, I know it is in her character to not like believe or whatever, but it takes an extraordinary amount for her to finally be like, wait a minute. It literally takes Mulder screaming in a body, being like, would I perpetrate a fucking government setup at this scale because I didn't want to know more? Would I rat you out? That's literally like the opposite of everything I'm about, bro.
Yeah, and she's like says that to him, like, this is an X-File. This is your life's work. This is your crusade. And he's like, no, it's not anymore. And she's like, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind.
She's like, am I in an alternate dimension right now? Did something happen to me?
I feel like that is true to Scully's character, though, that she would assume something happened to her almost before she, like, accepts, like, oh, duh, of course they body swap.
I mean, in Small Potatoes, it takes her seeing both of them together and a dude literally shape-shifting in her lap for her to be like, oh. So I guess in that context, yeah, I guess it does make sense that she needs like all of the evidence. And then it takes a little bit more. Like she's like, okay, I think I might believe. And then she's like, oh, okay, yeah, fuck.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I donked up really
I
bad. But
donked
somehow
up.
Mulder talked his way out of it, so it's fine.
The most Mulder shit of all time.
Like, yeah, you guys don't trust me. Me? I'm like the most trustworthy.
I like, too, that we get to see in that moment, like, Mulder doesn't really know anything about Fletcher, but has kind of gathered information about how he acts. He's sort of acting like Fletcher in that moment where he's like, oh, no, you guys are the untrustworthy ones. Obviously, I did this thing. Like, that's not how Mulder acts. And so I like that he's making this conscious choice to be Fletcher in this moment.
But also Mulder is, despite his many flaws, very smart and has been put in lots of crazy, like dangerous situations where he has to think on his feet and like read the room. And he was like, okay, I'm going to roll with this.
He also does have an advanced psychology degree and like understands people at a very fundamental level, even
He
if
just doesn't understand aliens.
even if 97% of the time he's like, disregard, don't need this information that I spent so much money learning.
And time, yeah.
Came out top of my class as a psychology student, and he's like, don't need any of that shit anymore. Time for some aliens.
Who cares?
Okay.
There is a lot of really good comedic timings or like comedic stuff with Mulder in that family life. Like where he convinces her that Scully's not a real, like, does Scully sound like a
Woman's
a
name?
woman's name? And then like weirdly accidentally convinces the wife that he has ED. And then like in the next scene, Scully knocks on the door and is like, hi, I'm Dana Scully. Like that is chef kiss hilarious. Like,
yes.
Also him watching the guy surveilling him or whatever, staking him out, but like opening the fucking blinds with his foot. It's just a really good choice, like a really good acting character choice.
I cannot wait until later in the season when we get to the undercover episode, because Arcadia has some stuff like that too, where it's just like him sitting at a window being a creep, where it's like, you've nailed this
good Mulder
assignment.
stuff.
Yes.
Again, I think the choice to not be like, oh, it's Michael Mckean as Mulder. It's like, no, we're going to see Mulder in this environment and how he would interact, and we're going to see it on David Duchovny's face. Like, that is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, we got to talk
Smart.
about the scene where they do the mirroring.
Yes.
It's so good.
It's so good.
The only time that acting exercise has ever been used.
Yes, absolutely.
The one time they were like, the thing we did when we were like a freshman in theater school.
Yeah, this is part of the like apocrypha, but we can talk about this now. I really like that scene, and it's one of the like notable moments from this because that's actually a dance that's done in the 1933 Marx Brothers comedy film Duck Soup, and so they learned this routine together.
That's great.
And they originally, the producers were like, "Oh, we can have you each film this, and then we'll do it with like really expensive effects." And Mckean and Duchovny were like, no, we gotta do this for real. And so they each took a week and a half and like practiced it a bunch. And then they built a dual set where it's an identical copy, like a mirror copy of each other. And then they really did it. And so they have a metronome on set that kept time for them so that they could.
That's so smart. I wondered.
And then they just removed it in post. And like, there's like music that plays over it. So it makes a lot of sense. But like, it's just so well done, and they do such a good job with it.
They
like,
really do.
They both really deliver on in a way that's like,
it's impressive.
yeah, it is. It's very impressive. And you're right. It's like, as actors, they probably had to do these stupid warm-up exercises like, who among us that went to theater school did not have to do fucking mirroring us? Like, it's just a thing. And like, if you've ever taken an improv class, they make you do the fucking mirroring exercise. And so it was fun to see like, oh, you can actually use this.
Especially knowing that Michael Mckean is like a comedy actor.
Yes,
and, like,
exactly.
And
David
improv
Duchovny
actor. And like, yeah,
like they're both very familiar with comedy. And so for them to be like, we don't need fucking silly ass effects to do this. Like, the only thing they use the effects for is when they fog up the mirror, which I think is a good choice too, to be like, this is a mirror. Like, we're going to establish this is a mirror. But like, that mirrored set and them doing this dance together, it's just so good. And it just visually works for, they have swapped. They are these opposite characters. I also love that when Joanne walks in, he just like does this final pose and is like, and see, and then just like comes out of it. Like, I made this choice to do this silly dance. Don't ask me about this fake wife. Like, I just love it. I think it's so good. I'm so glad that they took the time to do it.
If a good quality of Mulder is anything, he commits.
He does commit.
To the bit. He commits to the bit. He's gonna go the whole way.
Yeah, 100%. Mulder never does anything halfway ever, unless it's filing reports.
You can literally take him out of his own body, and he's still gonna do it.
Yep, you can take the Mulder out of the body. You cannot take Mulder away from who he is. It's his essence.
I love how brilliant Scully is, where she's like, "Oh, okay. How about you put these handcuffs on? Because we're and you handcuff yourself." And he does it, and then she's like, "Here's my gun,
I'm gonna
motherfucker."
fucking shoot you in the face. I love too that.
Also, knowing she's tiny, right? She has to be smart, and like Michael McKean's big, but Mulder is big,
huge. Yeah.
So like to be like, yeah, we're gonna handcuffs, and he was like, oh, this is fun, and like it's just such a good use of like Scully in that moment.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree.
When we find out that the general is the like leak, that's a great twist. That's a really good twist, because I think up until that point you just assume it's this dude too. I think it's a great twist. I also think that, like you said before, it does go a long way of being like pieces of the whole. This is why we have to break into multiple military facilities.
And why people don't understand that what they're doing is covering up government's conspiracy, or that they're part of the shadow government. Like,
and especially like, oh, we recruit all these military people because they are told and trained. You just say yes, sir, and you do it.
You don't ask questions. Yeah. I love that. I love that it's a really good example of how these kind of conspiracies work within a government, because it's true. People don't want to ask questions, like, especially when you make a lot of money. If you're being paid a lot to do a job that seems really simple, it's probably because you're part of a much bigger whole that you don't really understand.
Yeah.
And like, these are great examples of that.
It's a great example of that, yeah.
And I love too how the general, when he is talking to who he discovers as Mulder at the end of the second episode, is like, I spent my whole life covering things up. I don't understand what I'm covering up, and I would really like to understand. Are aliens real? Can you tell me? And Mulder's like, that's all I want, and I know that they're real,
Yeah.
but like, I would really like the government to acknowledge that they're real. What do you mean, you who are tampering with UFOs?
I think it's
don't
an important
know?
lesson for Mulder to learn too, because
Yes.
he just assumes everybody in these facilities knows. Like, why aren't you telling me? It's like, well, they can't tell you anything.
Just don't know shit. They really don't
They
know
put
shit.
a bullet in Big Ron's head, and nobody else knows anything.
Poor Big Ron.
It is a good lesson for him to learn.
Yep, I agree.
This scene where Scully is like, I don't know how to reverse this. Like, this is a permanent thing. Like, that is I like turned over to you guys and I was like, oh, so this whole season is tension. Got it.
Yes.
Got it.
Mhm.
But that was like a really sad romantic scene. It was like them being like, oh, it took you literally getting ripped from your body and our life's work basically being destroyed for us to realize, oh shit, we love each other. And now
Yeah.
you're really ugly. Bye.
You weren't so ugly, I could kiss you.
It's a great line.
Yeah, and right before this is Triangle, where Mulder, like, realizes, oh, fuck, I'm really in love with Scully, and the episode after this is How the Ghost Stole Christmas.
Just a wham bam, thank you, ma'am.
Exactly. They really start season 6 off with, we see you, audience. Are they gonna fuck? Not yet, but they are definitely in love with each other.
It's great. And sad.
Yeah, it is. It's a really touching moment.
Yeah.
I really like it. And again, when you're watching from the beginning of the series, by the time you get to this, it's like,
For sure.
oh, why? And also, like, this is the X-Files. Maybe they just stay like this. Like, you kind of have the assumption they will at some point return to this. But there is this idea, like, maybe Michael Mckean stays in this body for a couple of episodes. Like, there's nothing.
Yeah, we don't know. And she's gonna leave. She was the like whole like unsaid thing of like the FBI isn't the FBI without you. I don't want to do it without you. I'm not doing it without you. I'm just gonna quit. Like the end.
Yeah.
I don't mind all the hand wavy bullshit at the end. Like
Honestly, I don't either. This episode is so
it's literally
good
about
as
like
a whole.
a space-time warp. Like that's fake. Like who cares? Just
Yeah.
also please get all of these things out of other things. That was horrifying to me. That like I'm not generally a squeamish person. I get scared, but I'm not very squeamish. And holy shit,
This fucked you up.
That fucked me up. It turns out I really hate the visual of like half of a person's body stuck inside something else, or a poor lizard in his head and like them wiggling around. It was horrifying, and I don't like it.
I did like that within the like canon of this story, they really clearly establish it doesn't hurt though. Like it's two things existing completely fine within the same time and space. It just looks disgusting. And as someone who's experiencing it, is probably like horrifying to realize, but doesn't hurt them in any way. It's just horrifying.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
No, thanks. Ugh, God, even thinking about it, it's like turning my stomach. We have to stop talking about it. God, I hate it. Also, I kind of like that space-time goes back. Everything essentially goes back to normal, except for the waterbed. LOL. Everybody kind of forgets. Because also, by the end of this, Fletcher and his wife kind of have like this lovely reunion. And also, fuck Fletcher. I want his life to be bad. I want her to leave him. This guy doesn't get a happy ending. Fuck that dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hope she leaves him.
I thought you made a really good point too
Good
about
for Joanne.
Like, good for Joanne. Team Joanne. I thought you made a really good point too about perhaps the reason that Mulder's bedroom doesn't return, and we see also that Scully still has
The penny and the dime.
dime, the retirement savings of the gas station attendant, isn't in line of the ripple, and so is perhaps unaffected by the snapback. I like that. I've never thought of that, and so I thought that that's an interesting way to think about that.
The only like thing that would disprove that though is that like then Joanne would remember, but
And Kirsch
Fletcher
would
wouldn't,
remember.
and Kirsch would remember, but they wouldn't. So like, timey-wimey bullshit.
Timey-wimey, hand wavy, yada yada yada.
I mean, they're really fun, great episodes. Also, like, good for that secretary.
Get it? A.D. Kirsch's assistant.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? I like that she had no fucking shame. That was like
Oh,
a
yeah.
stride of fucking pride.
What's up,
She
Scully?
was like, hey.
Everyone thinks that y'all are together. I just sucked his dick in his apartment. No bedroom, don't care.
The most unbelievable part about that episode that like that woman walked into that apartment. I was like, I guess I'm still gonna do this.
I don't know. Again, if you've already decided you're gonna fuck a hot dude and you get into his apartment and you're like, well, whatever. Am I really gonna leave? No. All right, for some like fan note apocrypha stuff, Dreamland is the first episode that's non-mythology to be spread across 2 episodes, and it's the right choice. I feel like there's just too much to do here to
agreed.
squish it into 1 episode. Like, I feel like it would have been still good, but it would have been unsatisfying to try and shove all of this stuff.
Yeah, the like hand wavy stuff would have been a problem at that point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Fun fact, this was not originally written for Michael Mckean. The person who was supposed to play the part of Morris Fletcher was Gary Shandling. And he was busy filming something else. And he was like, oh, man, I would love to be in this. I love David. Would love to work with him. And then it really works out because he comes back and plays himself in Hollywood AD, which is a better part for him. And I feel like he would have been fine and great as Morris Fletcher. But Michael Mckean just nails it.
Yeah.
He's just so good and like has that feel of a government dirtbag. Like Gary Shandling feels dirtbaggy in lots of ways.
Yeah, but I feel like Gary Shandling in that role would have been like excessively dirtbaggy and like a like and this one was just like, oh, this guy, which is like the right vibe.
Yeah, exactly. He hits the right vibe. He also, there's something about his look that like fits in with the other agents, and like I'm sure they would have cast around Gary Shandling for the other people, but he fits in this universe in a way that Gary Shandling looks like a dude who's in movies, and Michael Mckean looks like he could be a government suit, and it just, I think, works really well. Michael Mckean beat out like a ton of people to be this part after Gary Shandling couldn't do it, and he was super excited about it, but he specifically asked the writers not to kill his character off, which I think is a fucking great move. And then he comes back later. He is a recurring character, and like,
interesting,
like, it's super smart on his part to be like, yes, I would love to be in this show. Please don't kill me.
Well,
please don't kill this character.
I'm excited knowing that he comes back. Like, I'm excited because I'm like, in what context? Oh my God, that makes sense because they have this insider information, but he's also like a tool. Like, I'm excited about that.
Yeah. And when he does come back, it's exciting because you're like, oh, it's the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the TV screen. We're like, oh my God, it's
but
him.
I guess they don't know each other, which is even more exciting.
And there's that moment where it's like, wait a minute.
Do we know each other?
Why do I wait a fucking second here? And so it like really works later too.
That's great.
He also comes back and has Bobby can correct me if I'm wrong, has a pretty big part in Lone Gunman, which like makes sense.
Yeah, because they establish that like relationship of like, you guys, I love you guys. You make my job easy. And then them being like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah, exactly. So I love it. I think it was really smart foresight on his part to be like, yes, but please. And they were like, sure, of course. Maybe we can use you later. Just kidding. We're definitely going to use you later. It's very smart. I really like that a lot. I didn't know this, even though they say it in the episode several times. Dreamland is one of the nicknames for Area 51. That's where that title comes from. So I was like, oh, that makes sense.
They say that.
Yeah, I know, but I wasn't paying attention, you know.
Sometimes you miss Sulu cradling Chekhov's head.
Exactly.
That's why we rewatch these things.
Exactly. When you're watching with another person,
every time.
You're looking for new shit. It's exciting. I don't have her name written down. I'm sure Bobby was going to talk about this in the producer corner, but the hobby woman who is body swapped with the military pilot is not actually an old woman, is a young woman wearing...
Well, I think you could really tell.
I mean,
I could tell.
There are things about that.
Weird.
Yeah, there are things about it, obviously, like, she looks like she's aged up, but it makes sense, too, that she's like, I can snap to attention, I can, like, live inside of this, but she's wearing a lot of prosthetics.
Yes.
And they do a really good job with it, where, like, the hardest thing for her was that she couldn't see properly out of her eye holes, and so that scene where she, like, flicks the cigarette at his crotch, they had to refilm that, like, 5 different times. She's like, I literally can't see what I'm fucking doing. But I thought that she nailed it. I love that switch because it's visually very impactful. You get this like military man crouched over like, I'm fucking freaking out, which like works.
Yeah.
But then to see this immediate visual of like, I apologize for not being in uniform, sir. It's like, okay, what the fuck is happening here? I love it. I think that it's a really great choice. Also because, I mean, there's so many beautiful shots in this. We didn't talk specifically about this, but that shot when Scully and Fletcher leave, and she's like, I'm sorry, you're stuck like this. That profile shot of him at like the magic hour with the blue is beautiful. It's
really
so
pretty. The
good.
final like shots of the episodes are really pretty.
Yeah, they do a great job of using this environment, and part of that is that they literally took the entire full production crew out into the desert and filmed most of this out in the desert, and it got to the point where like they were out there for so long that they had to pay the stipend that people could like eat and live out there for a little while. And David Duchovny over it. Fucking over it. He got to the
he was
point.
cranky by this season, right?
Yes, his life is starting to fall apart. He's in a place where he's like, I don't know about all this shit. I am this character. This character is me, and I'm uncomfortable looking into my own soul.
I don't like this.
I do not like this. So he kept asking, when is the show moving back to LA? And the production crew immediately had t-shirts with the question printed on it to mock him that they just wore around all the time, which I love. I think is hilarious. That gas station where you talked about while we were watching it looks like every gas station.
Yeah, it looks like the Twilight Zone one. It looks like the one in Supernatural. Like, I know it's like a trope of like paranormal stuff to be like lone gas station in the middle of nowhere, spooky shit happens.
That gas station was a real decommissioned gas station, and they really blew it up. They for real blew that shit up. They bought all the stuff inside of it. They stocked it like a real convenience store, and then they blew that the fuck up. And it works. Like, that's a great visual. I like when, again, they invest in practical effects. They're like, we're in the fucking desert. Let's really go for it and blow this shit up. Like, it's a very visually stimulating thing. I love it. I think it's a great choice that they spent the time and money to do it.
Blow shit up.
Love to blow things up. So perhaps, unsurprisingly, the reception for this episode was very positive for episode 1 and then was very mixed for part 2, which, like,
I think part 2's better.
see, I like both of them.
I mean, I like them both, but I think part 2 is better.
That's funny. I don't know that many people would feel that way, but I feel
Yeah,
like
but I'm right.
I mean, of course, you're always right. But I feel like part of it is that you get these like beautiful moments in the second one where you get this like very human storytelling that works, and you get this like bonding of these characters in a way that I really enjoy. And also, like, I just think of these as one big episode.
Yeah.
Like, these are just one big combined long
I
episode
think in
to me.
general, it's weird to think of 2-part episodes as not one big episode. It's like they just split them because they needed 2 things to tell a story. It's one story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that.
What are you doing?
Yeah. And a lot of the complaints about this were that there's the time wavy, hand wavy, yada yada.
You know, an X-Files tradition. So, like, I
A
don't know why
sci-fi
we're like,
tradition.
why
exactly.
we're pissed about it.
And by season 6, like, this is just a thing. Like, you just have to accept that sometimes things go back. Like, this is just the way that shit works sometimes. And then a lot of the other complaints were that it was too silly, which, like, I have said this so many times, and I will say it, I will die on this hill. If you don't like the silly parts of the X-Files, you don't actually like the X-Files. Like, they're so important to who these characters are, and they're so important to the character growth that happens over these seasons. Like, if by season 6 you don't like silly shit, and you don't like Mulder being fucking insane, and you don't like Scully being like, I refuse to believe, even though it's literally hitting me in the face, like, you don't really like the X-Files.
Yeah, I also don't think there are episodes of the X-Files that are just silly, like The Ghost Who Stole Christmas, that are very silly and slapsticky, and like that is part of the point. I think even though these episodes have a lot of very funny moments, I think a lot of it is really justified in the like body swap character stuff. Like I don't think a lot of the moments are supposed to be like ha 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 silly comedy, like the bit with like the nose and the nose ring, like that feels like something that you're like, well, are you going to give her an answer? I have no fucking context. I have to make an educated guess. It's not a terrible educated guess. Oops, I fucked up. Like, yeah, that's a really funny moment, but it also makes sense. It's not like silly just to be like wackadoo or whatever.
It's earned. I feel
It's
like
super earned.
everything inside of these episodes is earned except for maybe the snapback. But even then, like, again, it's fucking sci-fi. Like,
Get
you
over
just
it.
have to accept stuff and move on. That's it. That's all the Apocrypha I have.
Synopsis showdown.
Let's do it! Mulder and Scully take a field trip to Area 51, where a UFO truly fucks everyone's lives up by body swapping / mushing people together. Yada, 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 timey-wimey. Everything goes back to the way it should be, but Mulder finally has a bed.
Mulder and Scully finally realize how much they mean to each other due to a uncontrolled body swap mix-up, but it's too late to act on their feelings. Psych, JK, none of it happened. Nobody remembers a thing. Ain't time-space continuum a bitch.
And also there's this moment at the end where they call each other, and he's going back to his apartment, and she's at the office, where she's like, it looks like we got away with it. And they do have this like nice moment where it feels like maybe you do kind of remember. Maybe there are pieces of you that remember this, especially now that you're like out of the path of this time snap or whatever. Like, maybe you do remember some of this. And like, again, like you said, this season is all fucking tension, and so it
I'm on
feels
board.
appropriate that they've like built to this point. I love it. That's so good.
It's great. Season 6 fucks so far.
Yeah.
Every episode I've seen from season 6 fucks.
It's
I
gonna
think.
continue to fuck. It's real good. All right, ready for Deep Throat's mission logs?
Yes.
All is proceeding as expected and as promised. I can find no reason for concern, but yet I am filled with foreboding.
Starting with Return to Tomorrow, Stell mentioned this was written by John T. Duggan, and whatever he felt about what was done to his script afterwards, this earned him a nomination from the Writers Guild of America in Best Written Dramatic Episode in 1968, because even with the theological changes, it's still a really, really good script. Also mentioned by Stella earlier, this episode was directed by Ralph Sinensky, who we mentioned getting fired from the episode that he was directing at the time. And I think maybe we're coloring a little bit more of the situation surrounding that because he was the one that refers to this episode as the huge ping pong balls and also describes the episode as about which the less said, the better.
Which is crazy because it's a really
It's
good
such
episode.
a good episode. I think
But
he was
his
not happy
experience-
there.
I think, yeah, like the experience with Tana, even if it's like the best made thing, and you're like, yeah, but I was fucking miserable. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
We've worked on many things that could be described exactly like that. Also, kind of filling out that picture further, this episode was originally supposed to be directed by Joseph Pevney, who directed The Immunity Syndrome, and then right after that quit the show because in his mind, there was a certain lack of discipline from the actors now that Gene L. Kuhn left the show.
In a huff as well.
Probably in a huff as well. So we see what's happening here.
Yeah, I'm picking up a pattern.
We talked a little bit about some of the lovely music score notes and these big romantic swells and stuff like that. This episode is the latest in any season to feature new music written specifically for it. That was done by George Dunning. You'll hear a lot of the menacing Hinnock cues in later episodes, but none of those romantic lovey swells are used in an episode ever again,
Really?
which is weird
I'm
because
surprised by that.
they're so expressive
They're
and
good.
wonderful. Yeah.
Maybe they were too expressive and they were like, oh, well.
I mean, they are very expressive.
Maybe they were just like very particular to
Yeah.
that.
The Lisa, my beloved.
Moving on to some lore fan stuff. This episode marks George Takei's return to the series after leaving to film the Green Berets. He was gone for 10 episodes. His last episode before that break was I, Mud. In a blooper segment, William Shatner grabs one of the globes and proclaims, "Have no fear, Sargon is here." And in another clip, Shatner jumps a line over DeForest Kelley in the sickbay, with Shatner saying first, "I'm Bones," DeForest Kelley then responding, "Are you all right?" And then the two of them breaking up so hard that they couldn't even get it back together for the next take. Jumping into some casting stuff, that's Bill Blackburn as the kind of proto-android. He's also DeForest Kelley's normal stand-in. And
Yeah, that's like a real dude, like lying on the table.
You can tell.
Yep.
It's really clear.
also part of that stunt reel I mentioned earlier is a clip of him tearing off the prosthetics from all of the stuff on his face and everything. And assistant director Tiger Shapiro leaning into him and saying, "Well, son, you wanted show business. God damn it, you got it." Notable in this, because she's visually different and has a line, is that black nurse who you mentioned. That's an actress named Cindy Lou, and this is her only credited role.
She did a great job.
Yeah,
A
she
plus.
was great. She's visually, immediately, I
Yeah,
was like,
she's
I want to know
super
who this
pretty.
person is. She's very pretty.
Other than that, this is also pretty much a ship in a bottle episode, other than Diana Moldar as Lieutenant Commander Anne Mulhall. Stell talked a bit about Diana Moldar and her life within Star Trek, so I'll go through some things that she did outside of it. Her early roles include return roles on The Doctors, Dr. Kildare, Gunsmoke. After Trek, she does The Survivors, The Virginian, Hawaii Five-0, Mannix, Born Free, McLeod, and then after her role on TNG, she gets her most renowned role outside of us nerds. She was Rosalind Shays on LA Law, and also voiced Dr. Leslie Tompkins on Batman the Animated Series.
Nice.
Again, great fucking voice. And then after that, she kind of takes a break from acting. She has not returned since like the mid-90s.
I mean, those TNG episodes are on like syndication. Get that money.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, also on top of that, she was at one point a board member for the Screen Actors Guild and was the first woman to serve as president for the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, which is the academy that hands out the Emmys.
Nice.
She was their
Get it.
president from 83 to 85.
Good for her.
She, again, quit acting for a while and also wasn't known to do a lot of the Star Trek conventions. She took a 10-year break
Well, to be
from them.
fair, people are really shitty about Pulaski,
People
and
are
I
really
don't know
shitty
if
about
I would
Pulaski.
want, because people were sad that Bev was gone, and also Pulaski, she's grown on me, but she's also like, she's really shitty to Data, and people are like, Data's my precious baby, and I'm like, because I don't give a shit
Data.
about Data, but she has like, it's kind of turfy elements where she's like, he's like, my name is like, or I'm a android, I have feelings or whatever, not have feelings, but like she just treats him as like a robot because she's like, yeah, he's just like a fucking machine. And everybody's like, he's a part of our crew though, you have to be nice. And she's like, it's a robot.
The boiled down explanation, and honestly all that they gave her for that character after Dr. Crusher leaves, Dr. Pulaski comes on. Pulaski was supposed to be Bones. She was supposed to be an updated Bones, right down to the fear of transporters.
Yeah.
And kind of the angry leanings against anything non-human. So yeah, there was a lot of blowback from that. She
Yeah,
still
it
looks
doesn't work because I feel like Bones has a lot of like when he calls like Spock like green-blooded hobgoblin and stuff, like he says it, we know, especially in the like series, that like Bones and Spock do have a deeper relationship. And also like DeForest Kelley is also just like, even when he's being acerbic, there's something like inherently likable about DeForest Kelley, and like she does play it real mean. And I can see why people are like, oh, okay, she's just kind of a bitch.
And it was also, God, the first 3 seasons of Star Trek The Next Generation, they were literally always just waiting for the show to get canceled.
Yeah.
So she comes back to a convention in 2006, and part of her speech on the panel she gives is, one of the main reasons I'm here, if not the entire reason I'm here, is to celebrate Gene Roddenberry. He discovered me in many ways when I was a kid in Hollywood and put me in 2 different segments of the original Star Trek series, which were a total joy to do. I cannot tell you how inventive and how creative everybody who worked on that show, from the actors, the makeup, the hair, the camera, I will never forget it as long as I live. So even through all of that contention, she still looks back on it really, really fondly.
I mean, her episodes are 2 of my favorites. They're not episodes that are talked about as being like super good or whatever, but I think we'll get to the other one this season, I'm pretty sure, but they're 2 good episodes.
And it seems like she got what she wanted out of the industry. She had
Yeah.
a great career. So yeah. Moving on to Dreamland 1 and 2, these were written by the usual suspects, Vince Gilligan, John Scheiben, and Frank Spotnitz. Dreamland 1 is directed by Kim Manners, and Dreamland 2 is directed by Michael Watkins. I'm not sure we've talked a lot about Watkins, but he worked on several other shows aside from The X-Files, including Smallville, Boomtown, Lewis and Clark, can't get away from Superman apparently, Monk, Law and Order, No Ordinary Family, and Warehouse 13. He also has 2 Primetime Emmys for his work on Quantum Leap, so like deep into nerdage.
Love sci-fi. Good for him.
Warehouse 13 bucks.
Warehouse 13 bucks. Area 51, the government airplanes, and the alien craft were all clearly CGI.
Oh, yeah.
As was like
very.
the big washover. Some of that doesn't age so well, but
But I bet it looked good at the time.
Yeah.
oh, it looked fine at the time.
It's standard definition on a small TV.
Yeah.
Great. Looks
It's just
great.
like when we watch TOS stuff and like it's a giant, it's like a 52-inch TV and it's like been remastered and like, oh yeah, those are not the same people doing the fights. But like on a tiny TV, it would have been like, ooh, fights.
Mm-hmm.
Those were all done by Bill Miller. One thing that didn't work out was the original time warp effect, which producer and co-writer of this episode, John Scheiben, says just looked like a billowing blue sheet flying over them that they tried to like add a blur effect to. They ultimately just used the blurring effect instead of the
Yeah.
sheet. And I think it's enough.
It works.
Yeah,
It's
it's
enough.
great.
got big Nexus vibes.
Yes. I understand that reference.
Yeah, you do. Because you've weirdly seen like that Star Trek movie.
Lore and fan stuff. As Erin mentioned, Dreamland is another name for Area 51. It actually stands for Data Repository Establishment and Management Land. So
I hate that.
not just a...
Take that information out of my brain.
Okay, well, it'll probably stay in the episode. At about 4 seconds into Dreamland 1, the caption reads, Highway 375, rural Nevada at 11:17 p.m. Highway 375 actually exists in Nevada and is known, its official name is the Extraterrestrial Highway since 1996. So it is prime alien spottage. Fletcher comments to the lone gunman that Saddam Hussein is really a dinner theater actor named John Gilnitz. John Gilnitz is a name that's used repeatedly on the show as a villain name and is a combination of the writers' names, John Scheiben, Vince Gilligan, Frank Spotnitz.
It's better than the dartboard.
It is better than the dartboard. Mulder's contact within the government agents, General Wegman, wears a Buffalo Bills football team cap as a recognition sign when they're meeting up. Previously in the X-Files and also previously on the show, in Musings of a Cigarette-Smoking Man, CSM says he didn't want to see the Bills win a Super Bowl as long as he's alive. So it's a good flag for a government leaker. References in this in other media. In the first episode of the second season of Fringe, the scene where Mulder, Scully, and Morris meet plays in the episode because that is another shape-shifting body-swapping episode.
Oh, yeah.
And also because it's another Fox show, so that's just free footage.
Yeah, free footage. Also, they talk about Star Trek a whole fuck ton in these episodes.
Oh my
lot.
god. Like more
Little
than I've
baby
ever
Mulder
really heard.
dressed up as Spock was pretty good.
Yes.
Because of course Mulder, even my sister got like stolen by aliens, would be like into sci-fi and shit.
Oh, yeah. He talks in the NASA episode about he fucking loves NASA. He is a big nerd boy for space.
Speaking of big nerd boy for spaces, I don't know, I'm just here. We'll move into some casting stuff, and there's a lot of it because there's 2 episodes with a lot of soldiers and a lot of fill-in people. There is one soldier named Greg Smith who has a short list on IMDb, but one of his other listed roles is in Wayne's World as Alice Cooper's bassist. And that's because he's an actual metal bassist.
Oh, dope.
And he's played for bands and artists like Billy Joel, Wendy O. Williams, Alice Cooper, Rainbow, which is Ronnie James Dio's old group, Blue Oyster Cult, and Dokken. We briefly see Chris Stapleton as Captain Robert McDonough. He's from Sherman, Illinois, and also did a bunch of other like daytime shows, including the show As If and Days of Our Lives.
If you don't know, we are in Illinois, and that's why Bobby said it like that.
I think we referenced that enough that people understand that. But
We do
yeah,
an NYD. I don't know if we were like, yeah, extra Chicago.
Chicago.
We
Except
have
for
Chicago
in-
energy.
Piece of the action.
That is Laura Lee Hughes as the freshly fucked Kirsch's assistant.
She's excellent. I was
Get
confused her
it.
with Arlene.
Yeah.
They just look
Stride
so
up
similar to
pride.
me.
I'm not sure we've talked about her yet, but we'll see her in other episodes as well. She always plays Kirsch's assistant. She's also guested on like every CSI-ish type show. Great.
She's
Great
got that look.
dickhead. That is Ted White as the gas station attendant. His IMDb page is a litany of uncredited roles and stuntmen credits as big dudes, including a turn as Jason in Friday the 13th, the final chapter.
Damn. He was great. His couple of lines are fantastic.
Very
Keep the change.
memorable,
Oh,
yeah.
I'll just close up early for the day. Like, Jesus.
That is Dara Hollingworth as Christine Fletcher. She also has a listed appearance on Step by Step, but not aside from that. Her brother Terry Fletcher is played by Terrence Fletcher is played by Tyler Binkley. He has a few acting roles as well, but then transitioned into being a production and post-production assistant and has a lot more paid roles as that. Good for him. That's Julia Vera as Lana Che.
Yeah. She's excellent.
We see her again in the season 9 finale, The Truth, guesting as that same character.
Really?
Yes, it is canonically the same character.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. That's funny.
Her credits and guest appearances start all the way back in 63 with a role on General Hospital. After X-Files, she does 6 Feet Under, The Shield, CSI Miami, and just a long, long list of things. Most recently, she voiced Louisa in the Disney animated series Elena of Avalor.
I'm surprised we don't get more crossover with 6 Feet Under, considering they had to kill a new person at the beginning of every episode.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get there.
Keep a lookout.
Now that you've said it, I'll start noting it in my brain to not skip over 6 Feet Unders as we are slowly gaining shows to keep mentioning as this goes on. Kind of a fun casting thing with some of the agents in this episode. Michael B. Silver, who plays Grodin, and Scott Allen Campbell, who plays Smooch, along with James Pickens Jr., who plays Kirch, were also all reoccurring characters on NYPD Blue in seasons 6 and 7. And Silver and Campbell are a part of the show as a whole throughout several episodes. Scott Allen Campbell by himself also has roles on Walker, Texas Ranger, The Pretender, 24, Desperate Housewives, and Boston Legal. Michael Buckman Silver himself, his grandfather was an Oscar award-winning writer, Sidney Buckman. His credits include Friday the 13th, Jason Goes to Hell, the DS9 Season 2 episode Paradise, Law & Order, CSI, and returning roles on Beautiful People, CSI Miami, Daybreak, Veronica Mars, ER, Pains, Suits. He's still working and doing stuff. Probably more shows with one word.
Network shows.
That is John Mahon or Mahon, or Man. I don't know. It's Mahon. We'll go with
whatever.
John Mahon as Lieutenant General Edward Wegman. His earliest credits is the language lab director in The Exorcist. He also has roles on...
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. He also has roles in St. Elsewhere, Hill Street Blues, and LA Confidential, Armageddon, Zodiac. He was
Does
George.
he play like lots of military dudes?
Yeah.
He's got that look. Yeah.
He's also George on Studio 60 of the Sunset Strip.
Yes. Okay.
Also, he was in Star Trek Enterprise as Admiral Gardner in A Mirror Darkly Part 2.
Oh, interesting.
And he's the author of a memoir, A Life of Make-Believe, From Paralysis to Hollywood. It's about him overcoming paralysis from polio and then becoming a well-working guest actor.
Damn, that's so interesting.
That rules. Good for him. He's also great in this
He's really
episode.
good in this episode.
Very memorable, and like that toes that line of like, yes, could be a lieutenant general, but also like sweet and well-meaning and all of that.
And it's also like, we didn't talk about this, but in the first part of Dreamland, there's that line. It's like the guy who's the leak is calling from Wegman's office, but he is like nobody believes that it could be Wegman. So he's like doing a very good job at being like a hard ass lieutenant or whatever, but also like having to toe that line. I think that's really interesting. Like they didn't even think about him being a leak. They're like, well, whoever is doing it is sneaking into Wegman's office to make fun of us. We don't even think about it being this dude.
Mm-hmm.
Fletcher's reaction of, oh my God, it's you. Like,
he laughs.
really,
he
really
literally
sells it.
laughs at him like, oh my God, what are you, disgruntled? Like,
Such a good line.
Yeah.
That's Nora Dunn as Joanne Fletcher. Most people probably know her from SNL, which she was on from 85 to 90, and a bunch of other things. Dunn graduated from the Art Institute of Chicago.
Hey!
On SNL from 85 to 90, and some voice work on shows like Cow and Chicken and Pinky and the Brain before X-Files. Right after this, she's a returning character on The Nanny as Dr. Reynolds. Does a bunch of other voice work on Hysteria, which is a show I vaguely remember. It was like Animaniacs animation, but it was supposed to be about history. Also roles in Die, Mommy Die, Bruce Almighty, 3 Moons Over Milford, Pineapple Express, Entourage, Best Friends Whenever, and most recently Home Economics. She also toured performing her critically acclaimed one-woman show in theaters, Mythical Proportions, and wrote her own book of like character work and little sketch stuff she did from SNL called Nobody's Rip. As far as SNL lore goes, she's famous for being one of the performers to boycott the May 1990 episode of SNL because they chose Andrew Dice Clay to host, and he was an abusive prick, and so she told Lorne Michaels absolutely the fuck not.
Good for her.
Good for her.
And that brings us to Michael Mckean, who, like, again, is one of these guest actors, just like, he's the guy. He's the guy from Laverne and Shirley. He's the guy from Saturday Night Live from 84 to 97. He's the guy from Spinal Tap, from Clue, Animaniacs, Family Guy, Good Omens, Better Call Saul. He's the guy who
He's the guy.
He was the guy who was in one of my favorite Mr. Show sketches. He's the guy. Honestly, too much stuff. An absolute legend. He began his career in Pittsburgh while a student at Carnegie Mellon. That's where he met David Lander, who played Squiggy as Lenny and Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley, and also where he meets Harry L. Shearer, who he did Spinal Tap and all the Christopher Guest movies and all of that stuff with. They were in a comedy group called The Credibility Gap. And then, like, after Laverne and Shirley, he just did everything.
Yeah, he's great.
He was also in a Star Trek Voyager episode, The Thaw, as that creepy fucking clown dude.
Yeah.
Very memorable as that as well. The character Morse Fletcher, as Erin said, comes back in numerous episodes of The Lone Gunman, and also Season 6 X-Files episode 3 of a Kind, and a Season 9 episode Jump the Shark.
Oh, yeah. That's the final Lone Gunman episode.
Yeah.
Well,
Spoilers.
sort of.
I don't.
The final original series, Lone Gunman, is where they think they're wrapping up the Lone Gunman.
Yes.
Psych.
Psych!
A notable quote I pulled from him on random as to he was the oldest person hired to work Saturday Night Live when he was hired. And on why he was offered a SNL at age 46, he said Phil Hartman had just left the show and they needed somebody to play David Spade's dad. Said by one of the most talented and recognizable comedic actors ever. So
God, he's so funny. He's just so good.
He's great in this episode.
it would have been really, really different with Gary Shandling.
Yeah. It
A,
would
a
have been
different kind of sleaze. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sleaze. It would have been way sleazier. That is the
Fletcher is not sleazy in this.
He's
he
just
does weird, icky things like spanking
But it's that
Dana's
like
ass.
that's the institutionalized sexism. Like that made sense that like middle-aged government middle-aged government man with like too much power like thinks it's okay to slap a woman's ass. Like that makes sense. And it is bad, but it didn't feel sleazy. It felt like, oh, I'm entitled to this.
Yes.
Whereas I feel like if Gary Shandling did it would have had an element of like sleaze.
Yes, definitely.
So he worked with Nora Dunn on SNL for years, and that scene with the two of them where he's explaining that it is actually him and she's her, they act the fuck out of it
Yeah,
and they
they
get
do.
there. That's
Still
two
hate him,
comedic
but
bit
it's so
people,
good.
but like they get there together emotionally in a way that really, really ties all of that together.
And we didn't really mention this too, but you, Stella, said like Mulder is terrible at giving examples to Scully of like
He's like, you put bee pollen in your yogurt. And she's like, literally anybody can know that.
even the bee pollen thing, which is like good. I mean, good point. It's super weird and that is a very specific thing. But like that scene between Fletcher and Joanne, like he gives her such specific things about their lives and like they really earn that moment together. I think it really works. And like they clearly have a relationship because they've worked together before so many times that like they know how to earn that moment in like 30 fucking seconds.
Right.
They just absolutely nail it. All right, let's go to overall thoughts.
You're gonna miss me when I'm gone.
Yeah, fat chance, laughing boy.
Back off, Sneezy.
Enough.
Well, these are body swap episodes.
They sure are,
we don't have to shoehorn it in for this one. Like these are body swap episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Two very different kinds of body swap, which I like a lot. I like that we're getting a real spectrum of body swap.
Yeah.
Very much consent based, very much random chance, which like really works. I'm glad that we get such a juxtaposition inside of this episode of Extracts.
And the like juxtaposition of like everybody knows these people have body swapped and what that's like to interact with somebody that you know is not Captain Kirk but is inhabiting his body, even though he has the face of your friend and captain. And then an episode of like kind of a more traditional body swap story that's like, no, I'm this guy. I have to tell you a thing that only I would know. And like, oh, Scully, it's me.
Scully, it's me. That's not me.
I wouldn't do any of this.
You're making really good points here.
I think I may have dunked up.
Yeah, I mean, these episodes tie together in that they absolutely 100% are body swap episodes. And, like, again, they're different in, like, basically every way other than being body swap episodes. But,
Well,
like,
we do get scenes in both of them where, like, they're in the body swap have this, like, really romantic moment, too, because we
That's
get
true.
the Lace and Sargon bit, and then we get this one that's like, oh, we love each other, but you're not in the body that I love.
yeah, I have grown to love you as this person, and now we will not exist in this space together anymore.
Because even if we form a relationship or whatever, like, capital R relationship or little r relationship, it is going to be in a different space. It's going to be fundamentally different. Like, so there is, like, a grief for that. And, like, so you do get those, like, romantic moments. That's a
Yep.
thing.
Yeah, that's a thing. Good at podcasting. We know what we're talking about here. Yeah, these episodes are, again, really different and very weird to watch back to back, but work. Like, these really work for the theme that we picked. And, like, we picked this theme before we realized that we had accidentally done a body swap episode. And so I'm glad that we picked these ones intentionally as the
Agreed.
as the body swap episode. I think they just work very well.
Though it would have been interesting to do Turnabout Intruder in Dreamland because Turnabout Intruder is a more traditional body swap of I have to convince you that I'm doing this thing. Yeah, I'm glad it shook out like this.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So, casual fan questionnaire. As a casual fan, would you recommend this episode to a newbie?
Yes, I would. I think that it would be, I don't know, I feel like Spock is such a well-known character that even if you don't know anything about them, you would understand how fucking weird it is that he's like leaning on doorways and smiling and shit. And like,
I'm not
hey, you're a
helping to
pretty
build
lady.
this android. I am just chilling.
Yeah, I made this serum. I don't have to do fucking shit else. Like, I feel like that maybe would be the only thing that you'd kind of trip up against. But like, this is a great episode. And this is a really good example of Kirk as a great captain. This is a really good example of the crew like working together to solve a problem. Like, yes, I think you could recommend this to someone as a just drop in and watch this episode. Totally. Would you recommend Dreamland to a newbie?
No.
Yeah, it's, I think you could watch it.
I think it's this is similar where you're like, I don't think if anybody watched this out of context, they would get turned off by the X-Files or be like, I don't get it or whatever. But I think it is one of those episodes that like you get a lot more enjoyment from it if you have a personal relationship to the characters, especially not only like knowing their mannerisms and stuff, but especially this scene where they're like being like, hey, our relationship is going to change. And that is sad. Like that doesn't have the same weight if you don't care about those characters.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
No, I don't think it's a great newbie one.
Yeah. Good casual fan, not great newbie.
Yeah. What is the scene or moment from this episode that you won't forget?
I don't know. That's kind of a hard question. Part of it is the Kirk body acting when he first originally gets to breathe again. But I think honestly that line about like I'm not frightened of Oblivion when I'm with you. I'm obviously like not totally pulling that correctly, but like it's a really beautiful thought. It's a really beautiful thought to be like I've chosen to enter Oblivion willingly with you because I would rather do that and know that we're together in Oblivion rather than live in these spheres where we're not really together and also not non-consensually take these bodies. Like, I just thought that was really beautiful. So I think that's probably mine. It's a moment or scene that was staying with you from this.
Honestly so many
I
in this
know.
one. Honestly, probably all the scenes where everything's smushed together and made me want to throw up. Like,
Fair.
which is a specific me thing, which is like, okay, those are burned into my retina and I'm terrified. And I literally turned to Bobby and Erin and I went, in the unlikely event that this happens to me, please put a bullet in my forehead because this is horrifying. But then obviously there are scenes that are more like the farewell scene and the scene with Michael Mckean and the lone gunman. Like there are some really good iconic scenes, but truly the guy in the rock with the handle.
The two people making
Wow.
out. Don't talk about it. Did you ship anybody from this episode?
Oh yeah, duh.
Maybe.
Season 6 is a shipping season.
Yes. I'm so delighted.
Yeah.
This is probably how you felt when you were like, "Yeah, you like Star Trek." I'm like,
Yeah, well, you shipped him from the get.
Well, it's impossible not
I
to.
showed you Sitting on the Edge of Forever. That's a shippy ass episode.
Yeah. There's only one bed. There's not. There's two beds, but it feels like there's only one bed.
It's a very tiny apartment.
Yes.
And one bed has all of the components on it. It's fine. Are you shipping anybody in this episode?
I mean, I guess McSpones or whatever. That's not
McSpurk?
McSpurk, whatever. McSpones. Yeah.
Spones would just be Spones.
I realized that as soon as I said it. I was like, wait, where's
Double
Kirk?
Spones.
I want double Spones. I feel like the triumvirate in this really nail it. Like, you can tell what their relationship are. They're very, like, they're bonded together. And again, there's not, like, a ton of sexual tension except for that one very sexy scene between Kirk and Bones. But just that, like, I've chosen these people. These are my people. That's more how I felt about this episode. And, like, I love Chapel and Bones as friends, so I guess that is also something I'm always,
You can
like,
have a
jumped
best
on.
friendship.
Yeah.
I mean, mine is Kirk and Uhura, besties for life.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm drawn to.
Is this episode a fuck, fine, or flop?
This is a fuck.
Yeah, Dreamland's a fuck.
Yeah, these are fuck.
They
These are
fucks.
both a fuck.
The fuck.
Hey, what's up? Body swap. Fuck. One episode they do not fuck because they're like, we'll never give these bodies back. And the other one they're like, you know what I'm gonna do? Fuck a bunch.
I got this young virile body. Let's fuck.
Let's fuck. All right. You can find us on the internet. You can follow us at NYD Productions on Twitter, and you can interact with the show using the hashtag XTrixPod. You can find me at NYDurgency on Instagram.
You can find me on Twitter at Stella_Cheeks.
And you can find me on Twitter at Haberdasher9K.
You can also email us at xtrexpod@gmail.com with questions or comments, or if you want a fic where one of the boys swaps bodies and are like, oh no, this is torture because I love this person, and is it ethical for me to look at this penis I covet? Then yeah, I got that link. That would be a conundrum.
It would be a conundrum, you're right.
Is this immoral? Like, I do have to go to the bathroom, I have to shower, but do I close my eyes?
No.
Yeah, the answer is definitely no.
And if you want more special behind-the-scenes action, like our script notes, including knee-jerk show watch-along reactions, tens of minutes of outtakes from this episode, extra podcasts like an official channel, and access to our Discord server, then check out our Patreon at patreon.com/NYDProductions, where you can get access to all of that and more for only $1.
Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and to tell your friends. We find that this nerdy shit is better when it's shared.
We'll see you next episode for the toxic masculinity episode. Fun!
We know how to pick 'em.
In the meantime,
Believe boldly.
Seek truth.
ship proudly.
X-Trex is created and written by Stella Cheeks, Erin Cline, and Bobby Hoffman, and produced by Bobby Hoffman for NYD Productions. Our show theme is Alien Spy by Ionix, and our show art was made by Jonathan Curtis.